Welcome back. If I get the math right, I think he devoted 46 years of his life to serving the people of Houston's East Side and never lost an election. But after 13 terms in Congress, Gene Green decided to focus entirely on his family for once and conclude his career in office. This morning, we are grateful to welcome him back to our hot seat conversation. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Glad to.
Hey, as you watched your colleagues take that oath this week, was there a little tinge of regret, or what went through your heart and your mind?
Not any regret. In fact, I talked to my successor, Sylvia Garcia, and I have complete trust in her. I've worked with her for many years in her other elected positions. And but this week I was actually with two of my grandchildren, spent some good time with them, and next week I'll go to the other two grandchildren. So my wife and I decided in 2015 it was time that we were missing something, and so that's why I didn't run in 2016.
Well, you're owed. Hey, look, a long career that spanned 4 presidencies, and frequently you were able to work across the aisle with Republicans, but clearly that has become more difficult over the years. Talk about the climate in Washington right now.
Well, anytime you have a lot of new members elected, whether it be Republicans in '94 or 2010 or Democrats in 2018, they're going to try and do for their constituents that they campaigned on. That's what President Trump's talking about when he's going to get Mexico to pay for the wall. He couldn't get the wall paid for with Republican majority in the House and the Senate. And so that's going to be an issue, and why should a Democratic majority do something they couldn't do when they were in the majority? But it's a work in progress that people will realize that to get things done, you have to sit down. If you have a Republican Senate, a Democratic House, and I've always said I'd rather have half a loaf than no loaf at all. And so hopefully over the period of time, whether it be county government, city council, state legislature, or Congress, you have to work with your opponents and see what you can do.
Congressman, healthcare remains a huge issue in your district and throughout the country. You played an important role in crafting the Affordable Care Act, which dramatically reduced the number of Americans who are uninsured. Republicans have done some dismantling there without replacing the system. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I had one of the highest districts in the country before the Affordable Care Act, with 44% of my constituents who worked did not get insurance through their employer. We tried to correct that in the Affordable Care Act, and of course the President took away the individual mandate, but the employer mandate is still there. The President needs to learn executive orders does not change law. He can interpret them, but then you go to the courthouse, and that's where they've been at for a number of years now. So, but expansion of health care is important. In our district, the Affordable Care Act, if the state would have taken the Medicaid expansion, 46,000 of my former constituents would get health care. It's so important, but we did do some things that are really there now too. In the 90s, we had very few federally qualified health clinics in Harris County, and now we have a huge number of them. The Affordable Care Act helped, but FQHCs, as we call them, were always supported bipartisanly. President Bush, for his 8 years, always plussed up funding for community clinics, and we've created those in our district now to give people to a place to go instead of showing up at an emergency room.
Congressman, during your career, you had the challenge of a delicate balance. Creating and preserving jobs on the east side, which is heavily industrialized, but also protecting the environment. In fact, you played a pretty big role, a leading role in getting the San Jacinto River waste pits finally cleaned up by the EPA. How were you able to strike that balance?
Well, you need to fight battles that you can have something impact on. The San Jacinto waste pits is an issue that should have been dealt with decades ago. This is something that was left over from the 50s and 60s, and I'm glad we're continuing to do it. It's not as fast as a lot of folks in the Highlands and Channelview area want to, but we need to make sure the pressure's still there to clean that up. Too many of my constituents, or former constituents now, still crab and fish in San Jacinto River, and we want that to be safe for them and their families.
Hey, I'm going to skip ahead here, and I think it'd be remiss of me not to ask what accomplishment you were most proud of.
There's a whole lot of things. One, I pride myself and my staff in the district on delivery of immediately to our constituents. I had 77% predominantly Mexican American. One of the things we started my first term is to help people fill out their paperwork to become citizens. Legal residents who are paying taxes, why shouldn't they become a citizen and get to vote on who's spending their money? We did that every year. It's personally rewarding. We had a low immunization rate in our area. We started doing immunizations, free immunizations in August, partnering with different school districts, Galena Park, HISD, Aldine, a lot of our, to expand the number of children who get those shots. The cheapest medical dollar we spend is for vaccinations, whether it be for children or you and I who may need our shingles vaccine.
Congressman Gene Green, I want to personally thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And hope you'll come back to the hot seat.
Sure.
Okay. When we come back, after weeks of rejecting face-to-face negotiations, Houston's mayor says he's now ready to talk with firefighters. Is the outreach genuine or just politics? That's on our table after the break.